Welcome to Femme and Furious, a podcast where pop culture meets a feminine framing. I am your host, Julia Rose Portela, and today I have a really special episode. Maybe you've heard of this little TV show called Heated Rivalry. Well, I am interviewing / having a conversation with Ren Browne, who is an indie author and a lifetime romantic and an avid reader who is currently obsessed with Heated Rivalry and the way that it is opening doors for more inclusive and nuanced storytelling. So we will be having a conversation. She's all over Instagram. I'm sure if you're like anywhere in the Heated Rivalry fandom at this point, if you've been sucked into this vortex, I'm sure you've seen one of her videos in passing, or maybe you follow her. But we are having a conversation about Heated Rivalry and all of that fun stuff. So before I dive into today's episode and share the interview with you, let me tell you how you can support and follow the podcast. You can follow the podcast on any streaming platform, including YouTube, Apple. We still currently are on Spotify. I haven't been able to figure out how to disentangle myself from it because I used to host the podcast on there. So it is proving more difficult than I thought to pull the podcast entirely off of Spotify. However, you can find us everywhere else, including still on Patreon, on Substack. Those are free. They will have transcripts of the show notes, all of that good stuff. So you can find us literally everywhere at this point. All of that will be included in our show notes today. You can follow the podcast on Instagram and TikTok at femmeandfuriouspod. And you can always send your thoughts, feelings, opinions, anything that you want, especially about Heated Rivalry, especially ahead of the season finale next week. You can send that over to femmeandfuriouspod@gmail.com. And of course, you can join my monthly newsletter, Lipstick and Lore. And without further ado, let's get to the conversation with Ren. Welcome, Ren.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I have seen you all over my For You page, and I just
I'm so
took
sorry
my shot
about
and
that.
DM'd you. And I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's tell the people what we're talking about, which is Heated Rivalry. Maybe you've heard of
Obviously.
it. I don't know. Just a small TV show.
I'm faintly aware of it. It's like, on the edge of my consciousness. It's my knowledge of it is completely casual.
Yeah.
Never
have been obsessed or consumed with something ever in my life.
No.
I will say,
no.
as a fangirl, I don't know what your level of like fangirl is, but as I host a pop culture podcast, so
Yeah.
I'm a fangirl till the day I die. It has been so nice to see people consumed something the way that things consume me.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit vindicating.
Hell yeah. I mean, I think I had like kind of a later in life like introduction to fandom. I think like I kind of experienced like my first like fandom experience during COVID. And I think that I think it's like one of those things where I don't know that I was fully aware that like other people like obsessed about things or got super into things the way I did. And then and then I was kind of I started getting into like more of a fandom experience during COVID. And I've met like some of my best friends like through like the fandom community. And I, till the day I die, I love fandom. I love anything that can like bring people together in like just such a like exciting, fun way. And I think you can meet people that you would never meet otherwise. Like one of my best friends lives in London. I have one that lives in Australia. I have friends like all over the world because of fandom, which is awesome. So that would never happen otherwise.
What was your introduction to fandom? What got you in there?
I got like so many people. I got real deep into the Mandalorian fandom there for a little bit. Yeah. It was like the perfect. It was
Who
like
doesn't love a Grogu eating a little frog?
like Pedro Pascal took off his helmet and I was like, what's happening? And I literally remember like sitting on the couch watching that episode. And I remember seeing him take off his helmet. And then I think like the scenes following that in that episode where the way he played the character and the way he played like how awkward he was, like having like his, like it was such a smart choice. And like that I think is like what really like locked me in. And I remember sitting there and being like, it's happening. Like I'm obsessing. Like I'm obsessing right now. And then I fell down the rabbit hole in terms of actually, again, like I remember texting my sister and being like, I'm so into this show. And I like want to absorb more content. And she was like, well, why don't you go on AO3? And I was like, what's I'm like, what's that? Oh my God. And I mean, but like I fell down the rabbit hole of AO3, and that like got me back into reading. And I had been such a prolific reader my whole life, but I kind of just lost it for a few years. And I think that happens a lot. I think you see people all the time talk about how like they loved it as a kid and then they kind of lost it. And it got me back into reading and eventually got me back into writing. So like, I mean, I always kind of joke that like Pedro Pascal doesn't take off his helmet in The Mandalorian. Am I here? I don't know, So, but yeah, I love fandom for that reason.
I love that so much. Oh my God. Yeah. Are you AO3ing anything for Heated Rivalry, or are you just waiting that until the crash?
I'm waiting for the crash. I'm honestly trying to keep myself away from it a little bit because I'm like, if I go down, I literally just don't have any more time. Like, so if I like go down that rabbit hole, I'll never emerge. But I'm like, for the lull in between season 1 and season 2, AO3 is always there, right? And I know the writers are working overtime. God bless.
I saw a video recently, because obviously we have Shane and Ilya, and then we have Connor and Hudson. And it's
Oh
just
my
like
God,
this,
the polar.
it's just no matter where you go, you're just being influxed with these two people,
I
and they're
know, I know.
completely alternate personalities. And I saw this TikTok of somebody telling Hudson, who has been like, the fans aren't freaky enough, right? And
Yes,
who told
I know
him like,
exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, Shane is on his 7th baby on AO3, and his face is like, cool.
He's like, oh, no, I know. I saw that. I was like, oh, Shane, oh, Hudson, don't say that. I saw this comment. I saw me. I can't remember who said it, but like Hudson would terrify Shane, and that's so true. And then on the other side of the coin, you have Connor, who is just a sweet baby angel, and he's
Connor's
playing
so
this
baby
very
girl coded.
intense. He's so he's so precious. Must be protected at all costs. Both of them. Both of them are just outstanding people. But it's just so funny because he's like just so sweet, and that he's playing this really intense like Russian hockey player, and both of them I just disappear into those roles. And I think that is their performances have made, and they deserve so much credit. Just the micro expressions and how they're like really embodying these characters, I think is absolutely one of the reasons that the show is so popular.
Yeah, one of the things that I like really noticed about their acting that sort of hooked me in, and so I have my degree is in theater. Not that that makes me an expert or anything, but I grew up in the theater world, and I spend a lot of time acting. And there's a lot of texting in the show,
Yeah.
and that tends to be something that like in other TV shows gets like really dicey for me. And yet I think that they really act well through it. And that's when I
I
realized
agree.
like we're onto something here. I think it's also like people love, not to be gross, but like fresh meat. These are actors that we're not familiar with. And I've seen a lot of people like call for this like as everything's getting adapted now, but which is great for authors, to be honest, and great for fandom. So I'm not complaining about it, but I've seen this a lot too with like a lot of the romantasy that's getting adapted. People are like, just put in people that we don't know. Let us like
Yeah.
fall in love with people that can like grow into these characters. And I really think that when you have this like super juxtaposition of the amount of Connor and Hudson that we see versus like having the show each week with Shane and Ilya, and being able to see the stark contrast,
Hmm.
and then
Yep.
but also the commonality of, you know, Connor and Hudson as people who are sharing this physical intimacy, and in a way that as a girl who has girlfriends and displays this behavior all the time with my friends and always has, it
Hmm.
feels very platonic to me. And I know that people like can't digest that, but I was watching again another TikTok this morning where somebody was like, the male loneliness epidemic would just like be eradicated if people could just understand that this is
Yeah.
platonic and then do it. So I really love what the show has done, and I love how it's sort of like taken its roots into pop culture. And, I think about this a lot, but what is it that you think has made this show such a success in the way that it's taken off?
I think I think it's a lot of factors, and, I agree with you. I think just the portrayal of masculinity, both that's happening on the show and that we see between Connor and Hudson, who do have just a very sweet friendship from what it appears. We don't know them, right? But from what
Truly
we
no, yeah.
see, like, they seem, like, very protective of each other, they seem very sweet, they're very, like, physically affectionate with each other, and I think that's true. I think of my relationships with my girlfriends, and we are, like, very huggy, and, I think it's such a lovely part of human connection that physical connection is so important. And I think it's just such a lovely portrayal of masculinity in both cases. And I think it's a portrayal of masculinity that feels really safe. And so I think that's why you have a lot of women, even straight women watching this show and who are really captivated by this portrayal of masculinity because I think it is different from a lot of what we've been served up for a really long time. And I think it's kind of that whole thing of like, men written by women, right? But like even, but Connor and Hudson are, amazing too. So I think it's beyond the characters, it's just the conversations that are happening around the show. Jacob Tierney, is a huge factor of that as well. I think is just so different than I think a lot of what we've been served up for a really long time. And so I think that's a huge factor. I think that the show has just been done phenomenally well. I give it huge credit for not spoon feeding everything, which I think is something that so many shows do, where it's like they're literally just hitting you over the head with it. And so then there's not stuff to pick apart and there's not stuff to analyze and like go deep on because well, yeah, like everybody knows. Like versus like I think one of the things that I see people having so much fun with is like, oh, did you catch this or did you see that? So I think that's huge. It gives people something to talk about. But then I also think that I think that this show is just another expression of like just how powerful the romance genre is. And the fact that like it just continually gets dismissed, despite the fact that it is the number one revenue producing genre. And it continually gets dismissed as I made a video about this, a few days ago where I just romance continually gets dismissed as being fluffy, as being like unimportant. I think we know that a huge part of that is because it's female dominated, where it's like,
Okay.
it gets kind of brushed aside. But like people are starved for this kind of content. Like people love this kind of content. And I think to finally see it on screen in a way that hasn't been distilled down or like, made I don't even like, I mean, it feels watching the show feels like reading a book, feels like reading the book. Like
Yes.
the sex scenes have an important part. They're part of the storytelling and everything just feels really, really intentional. And I think people are just starved for that. And it's like, so, I mean, this show has so far exceeded my expectations that I think
Yeah.
it's just really cool to see for sure.
I'm really happy that you brought up romance because this is something that at the origin of this podcast, when I was really letting myself reach for it. So my full-time job is an astrologer.
Oh
So
my God, that's so cool.
yeah, so I have like opposite ends, but I love pop culture. And oftentimes I used to work for a high-end wellness resort, and part of our contract was like you have to teach and educate throughout the day.
Hmm.
And a lot of like, I'm like, how do you teach astrology? Because when you're teaching somebody meditation, it's different. But like, how do you bring astrology is so nuanced and it's so old? So a lot of times I would discuss mythology, but then like, okay, well, I know about Persephone because I'm psychotic, but like, that's not like a psychotic piece of mythos
We
to know. But
we love Persephone. We love a
but
queen.
yeah. So, but I would take these like pop culture references and I would really start weaving them in because I'd be like, well, have you ever seen, I'd be like, whatever was relevant at the time. I'd be like, are you watching Severance right now? Because let me give you like a specific example. It's easier to reach people that way. And I consume pretty much nothing but, as far as podcast goes, like pop culture podcasts.
Hmm.
And so I was like, why not just do it? I want to do it. And so like, I'm
Yeah.
just going to do it. And a part of what I was like really trying to refine when I was reaching for this, that would be my lens, that would be a little bit different than what other people were reaching for, was this focus on feminism and queer telling, storytelling.
Hmm.
And I'll be honest, I kind of want to like talk about, Heated Rivalry like as a relationship to the queer storytelling that I thought I would be telling on this podcast versus I think what maybe needs to be told. But one of the things that I wrote in my pilot episode is that genres and artists and things that are canonically feminine are the most dismissed, even though they're the most sellable. And so, like you're saying, yeah, like a romance book is, we are reaching, even with fantasy, it's like we're creating a genre called romantasy because we're interested in this plot. We're interested in this. And especially now when we are at such a crux in like the feminine versus the masculine. And I don't know why it feels so specifically that way. And like by feminine, I also mean like anything that's not toxic masculinity. So I'm including,
Yeah.
you know, men and queer folks who are on this sort of one pillar and then like toxic masculinity sort of on this other. And when I was like really thinking about Heated Rivalry and like why I think it's so successful as far as like a TV show goes is because it's romance. Like it's not, it has nothing to do with hockey, although my algorithm seems to think that I want to be pushed hockey content, to which
confused.
I'm like, yeah, I'm like, it's not, that's not what I want. I don't want
That's not what I'm here for. That's not what I'm here for. Yeah.
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 And I really was like thinking about it and I'm like, I think this is also opening the genre up. And I've seen a lot of people being like, well, this isn't like true, like queer storytelling. And it's like a lot of the criticism that I've seen. And I was like, but it is because it's sports romance and this is the genre and this is the tropes, right? So
yeah,
I just really love what they've done. And I think you're right. I think that there's so much intention behind how Jacob Tierney has adapted it. And specifically to the point where, you know, once again, people who look at women who are consuming content will be like, well, you're reading that because it's smut, you know, or reading that because it's porn.
Yeah.
To which we're like, no, it's a thing that carries the plot forward as far as like an intimacy perspective, which is how women tend to view sex. So not every woman, but lots of them. And I think like this episode 5, for example, is a really great way to say that like we're not watching this show for the sex, because there was very intentionally no sex in this episode.
Yeah.
It was intentional. It actually cut away from it.
Yeah.
I really just think that what he's done with the visual storytelling is, it's not like it's reinventing the wheel and it's not like it's anything that should be super profound. And yet the whole show feels like a masterpiece in storytelling of what we are looking for as an audience. And so, so let's dive into episode 5 and then we can like kind of pull other stuff in too.
Yeah.
What were your initial thoughts? Are you like a midnight watcher?
I am. I'm absolutely a midnight watcher. Yeah. Okay. So what's funny is I actually kind of started watching the show a little late, and my sister was messaging me about it, and she was like, you need to watch this show. She's like, this is such a good show. She's like, you're gonna love it. And so I was like, okay. And I kind of am hesitant sometimes to start new shows because I can get invested. So I'm like, I have to be careful about like where I kind of start investing. But I watched it. I stayed up late one night. This was a few weeks ago. I stayed up and I watched episode 1 and 2. And then while I was watching episode 2, episode 3 dropped. And so I just kept going. So then I watched like 1, 2, 3, like bam, bam, bam. I was like, and I think I was like just sitting, and I think what I noticed is I was fully engaged watching. And I think that I tend to be a chronic multitasker. And so I very frequently, when I'm watching something, have my phone. And I'm like, I was fully invested in the show and these characters. And I think even just, as a romance author myself and as like an avid romance reader, I was like, oh my God, they're fucking doing this thing. Like they're actually doing the thing. And it was really just, I was like, oh my, I really was just like, I was excited watching it. I was like, they're really doing it finally. And so I like watched it like bam, bam, bam. And then I was caught up. And so then when episode 4 came out, my sister, who lives 4 hours south of me, like we set up FaceTime and we watched it together. And then we did that last night too. And I think it's just been such a fun thing to watch with her. But I I completely understand the obsession because I think it's such a again, it's such a well done show. There's so much to get into. I think, I think the thing that's really crazy too is just like how much people are rewatching. And again, I think that goes back to the fact that like not everything in the episode is being spoon fed to you. So like when you do go back, you do catch new things every time. And that is something that I think is again, I think it's rare in TV shows and just in I think just in media in general right now. So I think it's really cool to see it so well done and to see a romance story get that kind of attention when again, like they've just been I think they're so frequently kind of dismissed as fluffy. To see like a romance show get that sort of attention, I think has been really, really cool to see. And I'm hopeful that it's gonna hopefully start some new conversations about like what does and does not work. So, you know,
Do you read a lot of hockey romance?
I don't. I'm not like a
Okay.
big sports like I'm not I would not say like I'm not a big sports romance reader. I tend to go the cowboy route more often than not. You can
Okay.
probably
I
see
had
my
a feeling.
wallpaper behind me. Yeah, but and I write like cowboy I have a couple of cowboy romances. So I think I tend to go the cowboy route. I typically don't gravitate towards sports romances because athletes have never really been my thing.
Okay.
So, like, I typically don't gravitate towards them. So that's why when she was like, "You need to," I was like, "Hockey." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Well," I was like, "I can get it." And I know, I love it. I'm probably gonna have to pick up some more hockey romances now. But it was, I think the way they're doing it, and I think again that portrayal of masculinity and the physicality, and then like just combined with like the softness and the storytelling, and how everything is interwoven together, and I think has been really, really smart. It might make me a hockey fan. I don't know. I might have to go to a game now,
Well, I'm sure
but
in Wisconsin you can find that.
I can find that. Yeah, I know. My sister and I were like, we need to go to a Milwaukee hockey game and wear our like heated rivalry jerseys.
I mean, the NHL has leaned into this all the way.
I love that they have. I love that they're playing the commercial during or the teaser like during halftime and stuff, and they're playing the music, and I think that's hysterical. I and it's important because I mean I think
Yeah.
that there are still very few pro athletes that are out, and I think hopefully
Here's my
seeing.
co-host.
Oh my god, what a cutie! If my co-host was up here, my co-host is a 70-pound dog, so that would not be as easy. I'm hopeful that it starts creating like a more welcoming environment for people to feel safe to be out. I think that's still such a huge problem in sports.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting to see the NHL kind of get behind it. I hope they put their money where their mouth is, so to speak, on it, and create a
Yeah.
supporting environment for if they do have athletes that actually want to come out.
I've also like really thought about this too because I thought it's really interesting that they're playing it because at these games because I've seen a lot of people taking footage from games about
Yeah.
the
Yep.
NHL. And to me I'm like are they acknowledging something about their demographic too? Like are they acknowledging that the demographic of people that are going to the games are people that would understand what this is? Cuz I'm thinking if you have people who are like hyper masculine, like I'm not watching a show about two gay dudes, right? Who are consuming the sport. I don't
Hmm.
know. So I'm like, I've thought it's interesting that they're leaning in. And I think it's interesting about this is like a completely different conversation. I don't have the answers to this, but a nod to where the NHL would like to be versus maybe where it is, and a nod to what they think the demographic is, or who they're
Yeah.
hoping to reach, or
I think it's
simply the
that.
virality of it, that they know that
Yeah.
something like that will go viral and bring more. I'm not really sure. I'm sure it's a combination of a bunch of stuff, but
Yeah.
I,
I
I
think
thought
that
thought it's interesting.
I think it's a huge I mean, I think you see it on TikTok and stuff all the time where like, like women posting about going to the boy aquarium, which
Yeah.
I think is I think it's so funny. And I think you see more and more hockey teams kind of leaning into that and making content around that. And like, cause they know it works and it is bringing in new people to watch. And I've seen a lot of like book clubs and bookstores and stuff host like hockey nights where they'll go to
Yeah.
and it's really interesting to me it's really interesting to me, like, why hockey, and I don't there is something about hockey, like this I think it's like this combination of, like, where a lot of the players come off as, yes, they're throwing each other into the boards, but they're also just, like, fun, goofy guys, like, like,
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a little bit more of, like, a complex, like, portrayal that I don't know,
Yeah.
it's hockey is resonating for some reason, but, I think that yeah, I think they're probably leaning in, I think they probably see the opportunity, again, um I think it's great if they are, wanting to welcome a new demographic to these games and make people feel like they're, celebrating it with them. I think again, I just hope that they then follow that up with like actually creating a supportive environment for their athletes if they do want to come
Yeah.
out because I think that I don't know that there's currently any like NHL players out.
I think maybe one.
Maybe yeah, I mean there's not and I think that's true of most professional leagues. So I think that, hopefully that conversation starts to change too. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you read these 2 books, though? Did you read Shane and Ilya's books?
Yes, I've read
Okay.
Heated Rivalry and I read The Long Game. I need to read the others in the series. I think
Yeah, me too.
I'm like trying to walk a very fine line when I'm doing my like analysis videos of like trying to just focus on what's on the show because I do think the show is strong enough to stand on its own.
I do too.
And I think that there are changes that are made based on, like, the format or even just based on, like, Connor and Hudson's interpretations of those characters, and so I think, I did read I read Heated Rivalry in The Long Game, honestly, because I couldn't cope with not having something after episode I think I was like, "Oh my god." But I'm gonna wait and read the rest of the books in between the 2 seasons, I think is what I'm
Yeah.
gonna do. Yeah.
So, I have, like, an interesting relationship to hockey and hockey romance. So, I my first love played and reffed hockey.
Okay.
Like, that was his job, and
Yeah.
he played growing up, and it was, like, a huge thing, and I did not grow up in a hockey family in that, like, my family plays hockey, but at the time when I was growing up, the New York Islanders, played 15 minutes from my house. So we had season tickets, we went all the time. It was always like, even when I was in high school, like my girlfriends and I would go because it was just like something fun that you
Mhm.
could do and it was easy and accessible. So I was really deep in the hockey world for a long time. And when me and my first love broke up, he was big into all sports, but like hockey most in particular. And so I had like a rejection of sports. And then I feel like when got like deeper into reading, because I was always a reader, but when I started to read like a lot of heavier stuff, I would almost like need a break. And hockey romance was like, this is easy. And like, it's like syrup, like it just goes down,
Yeah. It's like yeah,
So
it's like popcorn. I always say
yeah,
it's
yes,
like
popcorn's
popcorn.
the better
Yeah.
word.
Yep. Yeah.
Something to snack on, something for a brain break. It's fun, it's
Yeah.
quick, it's going to be like a nice palate cleanser. And I feel like I've read every hockey romance, but I had not read these books. And I read them immediately between episode 3 and 4
I think that's right.
because
Yeah. I read them
yeah.
too.
Yeah, I'm like, there was no Shane and Ilya
Need
this week,
something.
and
Yeah.
my soul can't cope, right? So I read the books, and it's definitely added a lot of flavor to the show. But I think you're right; the show stands on its own. I would say this week, episode 5 is the first time that we've gotten something that was like in the book, but additional in Ilya's monologue. Like, so we got the full
Yes. Oh my
monologue.
god. Yes. Yeah.
And it was also which like an enhancement and something that like enriched my experience. And
Mhm.
then we also had the accident, which went differently than I thought, and also the episode ended where I didn't think it was going to end where it ended. So I was happy. At least we didn't end in complete despondency this week.
I I had a poll
So
going
what
on
were
my
your thoughts on
page.
like this week?
Yeah, no, I had a poll going on my page because I was thinking to myself, I thought the way they ended it with Ilya saying that he's coming to the cottage was the way I thought they would end it. And then I kind of second guessed myself and I was like, I feel like this show has devastated us on every single ending. I was like, so if they're going for that approach again, I was like, the thing that would make the most sense is for them to end it on Shane's accident. And what's
Yeah.
funny is like there were a lot of comments on those posts where people are like, no, that's like Shane, the like Ilya saying they're going to the or I think it was like the Shane's accident happens too early, or like. But what's funny is like if you go back and look at the book, like those two scenes are like 20 like 20, like they're not far apart. Like that happens pretty bam bam. It's like Shane's accident, and then they watch the game, and then Ilya decides. So I think I was kind of like, it's going to be one of these two. I think it depends on like what note are we going to get to end the episode on? Are we going to get it to end on like an uplifting note, or are we going to end on another like big cliffhanger? And I love the way they did it. I think I was like kind of wondering if they ended it that way, if it would feel like we kind of lost the momentum, but it didn't. I think like the way they built up to Kip and Scott kissing was beautifully done. And I think you just it did feel like we still had a lot of momentum going into like Ilya saying that he was coming. So I loved that. I loved the way I love the way this show has handled the female characters. I really have appreciated that they have not made them the enemy, that they have not made them like additional
Yeah.
rivals. And what they've really acted as, I think, especially with Rose and Svetlana and even Elena, like, they've acted as kind of like the emotional support to help them navigate these situations that are very isolating, for in all of their cases. And so I think they've been handled really beautifully. um, I think so. I love that. And then I think the other thing I did love, which you just mentioned, was getting to actually hear Ilya's, or the translated version of Ilya's monologue. Um, I will defend that baby until the day I die.
Same.
I love him. I love him so much, and I think they did such a brilliant job on that monologue of just showing how broken he is and how desperately he wants love, and how much he's trying to be everything for everybody. And then like, I think it's just, I think especially when you look at that monologue, with the context of like how he was behaving with Shane in the prior episode of like he's trying to like there's that line in his monologue where he goes, I make sure the food is perfect. And all I could think of was the episode prior when like he's like, Shane, is your ginger ale cold enough? And I'm like, this poor baby. Like,
Yeah.
love, like he just, I think it was devastating. I think that for people who haven't read the books, I think that that monologue is so important to helping them understand Ilya and why he acts the way he acts and why he is the way he is, because he's just, I mean, he's just he's so broken. I love him.
I love him too. Yeah.
I love
I
both of them though. I love
yeah.
Shane too, for just like,
They
for different reasons. Yeah.
exactly. They bring just different stuff to the table. And
Yes. Yeah.
I imagine that we are gonna talk, a lot more about this when the second season comes out. I think we will get a lot more enrichment of these characters and depth
Yeah.
to the characters, as we navigate season two. But even here in season one, I mean, I think something that was so profound to me in Ilya's monologue today was also, and we've seen this, like, in episode 2, I think, when he's talking to Alexei,
Hmm.
and Alexei calls him a faggot, and he says it again here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's I'm not gonna say it's subtle, because it's not, but again, it's not spoon-fed to
Yeah.
you. It's not like a 2 plus 2 equals 4. And so when Ilya's giving this monologue and he's like, my brother, I wish I had the exact quote, I'm sorry, so I'm paraphrasing for everybody. I knew I should have wrote this monologue down before we got on this call. But to paraphrase, he's basically like, he doesn't like me, he
He's
hates me
always
just
hated
for who
me.
I am.
What I think what's so crushing too is Ilya goes, he's always hated me. And I think he says something like, I know why. Or like I kind of like, and
Yes.
almost kind of like justifying that his brother like he's like, I know why. Like kind of on it in a way. I think you just get like this glimpse of like Ilya's, I mean, he does not have, I think, a lot of self-worth. And I think you get that in this monologue where he's like, my brother hates me. And for him to kind of almost be like, and I get it, or to like, feel this loyalty to his father who's also treated him
Uh-huh.
terribly. And I think you just Like, I mean, it's heartbreaking. I mean, it really
Yeah.
is like that he's like kind of just, and I think even the fact that Ilya justifies his brother acting the way he does at dinner, where his brother like goes after him physically. And, Ilya is perceptive enough to be able to say, like, he's scared and it makes him, I can't
Yeah.
remember what he says, like, he's scared and it makes him ugly. And then that makes me ugly too, or something
Yeah.
like that. And it's like he's still like justifying the behavior. And it's like, it's heartbreak that whole monologue is just heartbreaking. I think you realize how isolated he is, with the exception of Svetlana, who thank God, but,
Yeah.
like, I mean, it's just heartbreaking. So,
And this foil between, or I guess this mirror between, again, I think it's episode 1 or episode 2, where we're sort of like zooming in on Ilya's face as his dad's talking to the minister.
yeah.
And
Yep.
his dad is like, he's lazy. That's why they lost the Olympic game or
Mhm.
whatever. And then for us to get again like this conversation between him and Shane where he's like, I'm lazy. And what he's really saying in that is like, I don't want to find anyone else. I have you, right?
Right.
I have
Yeah.
Svetlana, but like he's really
Yeah.
talking about
He's always
Shane.
he's like, I'm lazy." Like, another like, it's that whole conversation, and I think people feel it. I've seen people get so, like, they're like, "Well, he shouldn't have been," and I'm like, he's putting feelers out in a way that is still self-protective, and
Mhm.
I think he's learned that behavior from being like, from being like, a queer person in Russia when it's not safe for that sort of information to be out. Do he like grew up in an abusive household, and that's one of the things I think I've talked about in my videos, where it's just like he's had to learn very, like, carefully how to ask questions in a way that's self-protective. And I think, yeah, I completely agree with you that when he's like, well, I'm lazy, what he's hoping to say is like, I don't really want to have to find someone else, I would prefer you. But I completely agree with you, where I love that Shane just immediately contradicts that, like, I don't know that, well, no, I side of you at all. And you can see like his Ilya's sweet face, like, just be like, I mean, that was probably just such a validating moment for him to have somebody
Yeah.
disagree. Like, I mean, he's been called this. I mean, just to have someone not think the worst of him, I think
Yeah.
is huge for him.
One
So,
of my favorite lines in the book, and again, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like when they're shaking hands and he kind of squeezes his hand, Shane squeezes Ilya's
mhm.
hand as this acknowledgement of like, I think in the book it says something like, we're both supposed to stand at the top, but we'll always be there
Yes.
together.
Yeah, yeah,
And so this acknowledgement between the two of them. And so, yeah, like Ilya was the number one draft pick. Someone who's lazy is
yeah.
the number one draft pick,
No,
right? Someone who's
it's
lazy isn't going to
crazy.
the Olympics, isn't playing in
Well,
the All-Star games. Like,
it's
and
no, and he's the one taking care of everybody around
yeah,
him. Like, he's taking care of everyone around him, and then I think, and there's, I think, like, something in his monologue too, where he says, "I don't have," like, it's like, "I don't have more to give. Like, I've given,
yeah,
like, I don't have more I can like, he's already given all that he can give, and it's still not enough." And that's like, I mean, that's so heartbreaking for him. And I love that they had the translated monologue in there, because, and I give such incredible props to Connor's story for being able to do that. Um, but because it does just, I think, help you understand Ilya in a way that you probably might not as well if you hadn't read the books, or if you're not, I think if you don't look at his, I think if you don't have this kind of insight into his behavior of like, he is self-protecting. Like, I think a lot of his stuff can look more callous, and it's not. He's scared.
yeah,
He's scared. They're also so young. I don't think people realize sometimes, like, how young they're supposed to be in this show, like early 20s. They're, like, early mid-20s. Like, and they have
yeah. I think
no
they're like 23
other.
or 24 in the show, and this
Y
supposed to be in the show. And I mean, they're both 24 and
yeah.
25, like ish in real life, I think.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they're young, and I think too, like, Ilya and Shane, like, they don't have any other, like, they don't know anything about hockey. Like, they have no other, like, serious relationship experience. They have no other, like, real life experience. Like, they are in this bubble, and just the two of them in their little 6-year long situationship, and, like, no wonder they don't know how to talk to each other. I mean, God bless, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's what's so amazing about this episode is they finally do break that fourth wall. So,
yeah.
Ilya, who has demonstrated in his own way vulnerability in episode 4,
Yes. Yep.
and then displays it again, with the monologue, right?
Mhm.
It's in Russian, and so we don't know. Shane doesn't know what he's saying, but he knows that he's being vulnerable in this moment. He doesn't need to know
Yeah.
what he's saying in order to understand that he is obviously processing and dealing with a lot. Shane brings up Russia and his family often, almost every episode, and he knows at this point that this is something that like Ilya kind of
Mhm.
turns away from or like deflects from. And so we get, this scene between the two of them in the hotel just before,
Mhm.
um, where Ilya starts to break down. And a part of, I think, the breakdown is Shane's acknowledgement that he ran away the episode
Yeah.
before. And I think that is, the dagger is already there. He's already hurt. He's holding on to it. He's holding on to it enough to mention it not once but twice in that scene.
Mhm.
One sort of subtly, one sort of more direct.
Yeah.
And then, Shane twists that knife for him. He's already in so much pain and he's dealing with so much with his dad. And we see that just before, Shane comes into the room, he swipes away a call from Alexei. So we know that this is sort of fresh on his mind. And then it comes up in conversation because Shane can't leave well enough alone. He wants the
Yes. And he
vulnerability.
and he needs that.
Yeah.
Ilya is so good at retreating. Like, he's so good at putting feelers out and then backing away, and this is the first time, and I as I was watching it, I was like, "Yes, Shane." Don't let him do that, and I
Yeah.
think that that's where you see in that scene where I think you see Ilya trying to self-protect again, where he's like, "It's not." It was like, "Yeah, you ran away over nothing. It's nothing." And like we can be nothing and it's fine, and you see him trying to and Shane doesn't let him, and I was like,
Yeah.
yes, don't let him pull away, because otherwise this is just Shane is really the one that breaks the cycle, and I was so proud of him, honestly, because I was like, yes, don't let him keep pulling
Yeah.
away, or you're going to be stuck like this forever. But I thought that was, and I loved that, seeing Ilya break down, and this is one of those, I think this is such a healing moment for Ilya too, because he broke down and he was comforted, and nothing bad happened. I mean, I think generally when Ilya is vulnerable, something bad happens. And then now
Yeah.
this time, this was such a good like response to what happened between them in episode 4. It was like a do-over. And I was
Yeah.
like, thank you. It
Yeah.
was healing, you know?
I was even thinking back to episode 2 when they're in the bathroom and Shane is crying. And,
Yes. Yeah.
and how Shane is so vulnerable in that moment where he's
Yeah.
like, please, like he's
Yeah.
begging him,
Mhm.
and his shame in that and his
Yeah.
desperation and who were you with, this like
Yeah. Yeah.
jealousy.
He's
And now,
so yeah.
yeah, all of this, Shane, the second that Ilya crosses the line at the beach and just their pinkies are sort of swirling together, yeah, and I'm kicking and screaming like in my,
Oh my god. I was like, "Oh my god, this is," I know. I was like, "So sweet." I had the biggest grin on my face during that whole scene, and I knew as soon as you saw the beach that it was coming, but I was like, "Oh my god," because it's just it's so sweet, and he's so, so down bad. I mean, and Ilya has been down bad day 1, and I think it's just, they're so sweet together, and I think you see, this moment where, Ilya kind of initiates things on the beach, and then he kinda backs away again, and that's why I, loved Shane being like, "No," and Shane even saying, "That's bullshit."
yeah,
Last time we were together, things were different, and Ilya kind of and he's like, "No, no, they were, that's bullshit." I was
yeah,
so proud of Shane for being like, "No, we're gonna talk about this," which I love
yeah.
that.
And finishing the conversation that Ilya really tries to start in
Yes.
episode 4, where he's
Yeah.
like, "I like Svetlana, but I like you, not as a person, but I
Yep.
like you." And for Shane to show up here, free from telling Rose, right? And of
Mhm.
course he's like, who else could I tell? And we know he's just told Rose, but
Yeah.
that's not even the point. The point is that the only person he wants to tell is
Right.
Ilya. And so he's, yeah,
This is the most relevant person. This information is more relevant to Ilya than anything else in
yeah,
the world. And I love that he says, like, it's not just that I can't remember exactly how he phrases it, but he's like, "It's not just that I'm gay, it's you. It's for me, it's you." Um, I think that I give so much kudos to Shane in that scene for, like, not letting it could have gone the completely other way, and he really had to be like, but I think it's because he's accepted he's accepted this part of himself, and he's so much more confident as a result, and I think he can finally have this conversation, eh, because he is at that point much further along, like, emotionally in maturity than Ilya is. I mean, I
yeah,
think that we see that in Heated Rivalry. Like, Heated Rivalry, I think, is a lot more about Shane reaching some self-acceptance and Ilya, like, a little bit, but then Long Game, I think Long Game is gonna be so good. The
yeah.
devastation, the crying, the devastation that's gonna happen in the Long Game. I can't wait.
Well, there's so much repression. And I mean,
Yeah,
we have Shane showing up in this episode of the All-Star game all dressed up.
cute
And
as a button in his white jacket. Someone commented on one of my videos that they're like, "He looks like Miami Vice," and I was like, "He totally
he
does, but
does.
it's working for him."
Yeah.
Did you catch that he wore the same outfit to his dinner with Ro I was I just made a video this morning. I was like, "No wonder he got a stylist." He's just getting those clothes are cursed. He's gotta, like, just throw them
Yeah.
away and start over.
Well, but I also think that I wanted to point this out only because of what you just said, which is like he does have this newfound confidence. And so it's elevating him. And
Yeah.
whereas he hides behind a lot of I think Shane hides a lot behind the rivalry
Yeah.
in
Yeah. He
earlier
absolutely does.
episodes. And so the this comes from book 2 when Ilya's like, "Not everything has to be a competition between us," which I'm, like, really excited to get to
Mhm.
that point with
Yeah.
their relationship, but, just like the, "Do I make you curious?" Obviously. Like, this almost frustration
Yeah.
about the tension that they're experiencing, and so I think that by telling Rose, where Ilya's like, "Is this because of Rose? Are you dressing like this because of Rose?" And Shayna's like, "Well, yeah, they all dress nice, but like, no, but yes, because he's told
Yes.
somebody and now he has emerged, right? This thing
Yes.
about him has been unveiled, and so he can be the next level of himself. He doesn't need to hide behind this persona because he can step
Exactly.
into something new, which I think he's trying. And so I think that's why when we get this scene of him talking to Ilya, he is confident enough to say, no, something was different about last time. And
Yep.
because I
Yeah.
know something was different about last time, that's why I'm going to drag this conversation to your family. What's going on
Yeah.
with your family? And how,
Yeah.
and, this idea that he says, like, I could never go back to Russia. And Shane understanding in this moment that it's not really about him. It's not really a deflection because he doesn't like him. It's
Mhm.
a rejection of the entirety of this thing because of what Ilya would lose. And so at this point, they're not really focused on the hockey.
I think it's like what Ilya feels like because I think it's like one of those things where you're like when he's like, "I could never go back," and, like, I think as a reader, as a viewer, you're like, "Good. Like, please don't go back. You're miserable there." But I think too that's why the monologue is so important because you understand this sense of responsibility he feels to his family. And I think that, that harkens back to episode 2, I think when Shane is like, "Do you like it there?" And Ilya's like, "Well, what does that matter?" But I
Yeah.
think that it's such an important conversation for them because I think Shane, to your exact point, does begin to understand it's not him. It's these pressures around them. And then I think that I think that Rose was the perfect person to have that conversation with Shane because I think because she is very unlike Ilya, she has a high sense of self-worth. And there's no real stakes for her in that conversation. Like she doesn't like it's not a life-ending thing for her one way or another, and so I think she could, and it's also not her first rodeo, right? Where she
Yeah.
says, like, "This has happened to me before." Because I think what I found so interesting about that conversation with Shane and Rose is, like, she kind of starts going about it the same way Ilya did, where she's being very subtle and kind of, like, talking in, like, generalities, and she catches and identifies, and she goes, "I'm not going about this the right way." But she,
Yeah.
like, is able to realize that for Shane, she's not communicating effectively, and then she actually becomes much more direct, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what Shane needs, and then she normalizes it for him because it's happened to her before, and, like, you can see, like, the relief when she's like, "Yeah, this is, like, 80% of my boyfriends end up leaving me for a guy," and he's like, "Oh," but you can see his mind being like, "Oh, it's not just
Yeah.
me. This is, like, this," and I love her saying, like, "This is not a problem, like, a problem you can fix." Like, and 2, like, 1, you can't fix it, but also there's nothing to fix. Like, Shane is
Yeah.
perfect the way he is. It's just
Yeah.
I love the way they handled that conversation, and I think Rose was the perfect person to have that conversation with him
Mhm.
in a way that I don't think anyone else in Shane's life could have.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it goes so well. And you can
Yeah.
see Shane is so much lighter at the end of that conversation. I
Yes.
mean, God, love him. Yeah,
And
so
same thing
sweet.
with Svetlana. I
I know.
paused the TV and started crying when she was like, "I hope Jane, whoever he is, knows he's
Whoever
lucky,"
he
you
is.
know?
I know, I was like, "He," I was like, "She," and she knows, like, because she's, like, hinting around in bed where she's like,
Mhm.
you know Shane is
He's got
gorgeous."
yeah, you know he's hot.
I know, I love Svetlana. I love the women in this show. I love the
Yeah,
way
I do
they've handled
too.
the women in this show, and I think Svetlana is, and I think even too for Svetlana to be like, to talk to him about it in a way that reinforces his, again, his self-worth, because Ilya does have very low self-esteem in some cases,
Mhm.
like, to be able to, like, I hope he realizes how lucky he is. You know, like, yeah, like, "I know you love me." Like, "You're not, like, letting me down."
Yeah.
She's freeing him of that obligation. She's like, "You're not letting
Yes.
me, like, I know you love me, but you love him differently, and that's okay." Like, I think they
Yeah.
both told the boys exactly what they needed to hear, and I was like, it's like, look at these absolute queens." And it's
Yeah.
like Elena too, like, with Scott and Kip, like, I love that she defended, Kip, like, she protected Kip, but not in a way that, like, she protected Scott too. She
Yeah.
said to both of us, she's like, "You need sunshine." I
Yeah.
mean, just I love the way that women are written in the show, and that they I think that even just, like, some of the slight changes I think have been lovely.
Yeah. I think a lot of the stuff has been handled with care, but I really
Yeah.
loved that. I really loved the freeing of Shane because of Rose, and
Yep.
I really loved that this conversation with Svetlana came earlier than
Yes.
it
Yeah.
does in the books, but,
Yep.
and I really think that, you know, she's there as the buffer between him and Alexei, and then she is the buffer between him and Shane, but she sort of extracts herself from that because she
Mhm.
knows. And
Yeah, she knows.
she knows that this moment for him, for whatever reason, I guess maybe because of her relationship to Ilya and knowing how he
Mhm.
would feel about his family, you know, in that monologue, Ilya says something, and it might have even been before the monologue, where he says, I wish he was proud of me, and he's talking about his dad, or I wish I got some sort of validation from him or something
Yeah, I
like
wish
that.
he knew me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I wish I could have been here to take care of him, but I couldn't because I was taking
Mhm.
care of him in this other way, and
Mhm.
his guilt with that, and so, you know, it was never until his father died that he was ever going to be able to free himself from this obligation of going back to Russia. And I think in that moment, knowing this, where Svetlana can then allow him to untether from her
Mhm.
in this sexual capacity, at least. I mean, we
Mhm.
still see them together because she's like, "I'm going back to Russia, put the stuff in the suitcase for your niece," like, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this
Yep.
freedom that she gives him and how this allows them to have this conversation and allows, you know, I think that scene in the hotel where, you know, Shane is really, really good at making things more comfortable for Ilya.
Mhm.
He does this when he mentions his father during the tuna melt scene, and then obviously just, like, it deepens so much in that moment, and then he freaks out. But we get it again here where Ilya turns away because he starts to cry, and Shane
Mhm.
climbs on top of his lap, and okay, they kiss, but it's really more that he embraces him, and
Yeah,
it
he's
pans
holding
back, and you
him.
can see him rocking
Yeah,
him
yeah.
in this, and then it cuts away, right? So we don't get the sex, but it cuts away, and we get goodbye Shane, goodbye Ilya, and like,
I know, and now they're on the first name basis, and, like, that shift is so intentional. I love the way they handled that, and I think that, one of the things that I think after episode 4 that really stuck with me was I kept thinking about, like, when was the last time Ilya has been held by anybody? And even when he gets to snuggle with Shane, like, I mean, he's the one holding Shane. I think, like, this thing where he has this moment of vulnerability and he gets held is has to be so incredibly healing for him, and it is what kind of allows them to move forward finally. But even if it's like they don't fully understand, like, um, what they're gonna do, like, that they just know they know. I think it's that quote that you mentioned where it's like, "We were meant to be standing, like, alone, but instead it's all we're always gonna be side by side," and I think that it's like they know that they're gonna be together, they just have to figure out, like, how.
yeah,
And there are so many hurdles, but I agree with you. I think um unless Ilya's dad had died, like, with Ilya's dad dying, I think freed him from so much of that, at least that obligation, because he really doesn't have a reason to go back after that. So, I know, but it's I know that whole scene was handled really well. I agree.
yeah. And knows that he won't, because he gives him his
And
apartment.
knows.
He's like, "Take my
Yeah.
apartment. You
Yep.
sell it,
Take my
live there, do whatever you want.
I don't care.
This is
Yeah.
the last thing that I'm giving to
Mhm.
you, and that's it," And again, it's
Yeah.
not explicitly said that way, but he's like, "Take my apartment." Well, maybe he does actually say, "You will never ever hear from
He's
me
like,
again," or "I
Do not
never wanna hear
contact
from you
me."
again." Yeah.
Yeah, I'm putting a trust for my niece, which I love that he did that because I think Ilya, like, that's a common theme in the books too, that Ilya is great with kids, that Ilya loves kids and, that he's trying to provide for he's not punishing the kid the way
Yeah.
he was punished. Like, he's gonna provide for his niece, so
Yeah.
I think that was really sweet. I loved getting all the insight into his character, and I think he's just, I think he's so vulnerable in those moments. I love that he had Svetlana there in Russia, and then he has Shane, and just the fact that he's asking for then, like, that for Shane to be there, like, "Can I call you? Can you come over?" Like, I mean, that's big for him. That's big.
Yeah. Their relationship does take a turn.
Mhm,
I thought it was handled with care and with reverency, and I really appreciate that.
mhm.
So let's talk about the accident, which I would say was my
I'm sick because that's, like, my favorite scene in the book.
I was a little underwhelmed, I'm gonna be
I
honest. The rest of the episode was so good, and I was, like, so looking forward to this, and I'm curious why they made the choices they made to take out the stuff they did.
I am too. I have to say, like, that is, like, my favorite scene in the book, and I was really sad, and this is, like, literally, I think, been my first, like, true criticism. I was really sad that they took out the line, like, "Ilya, they can see us. We're not
Yes.
alone," because I love that line, and I think it is interesting and two, the fact that, like, they do, like, they have Ilya, like, stand so far back and that, like, they have
Yeah.
Shane talking when Ilya's not close. I was intrigued by that too. I think that I don't know if that was meant to kind of establish, like, Ilya, like, kind of like this distance being put between them again, because, like, when Ilya shows up in the hospital room, like, he is kind of, like, trying to, like, he is a little bit more guarded because I think he's just had the shit scared out of him. But, I know, I was bummed that that line wasn't in there because that's, like, one of my favorite parts is knowing that, like, that even in and out of consciousness, Shane knows that, like, Ilya is, like, not leaving and that he knows that Ilya is, which they do have Shane talking about that as they're going into the tunnel. But, I know, I was curious about that too, for sure.
Yeah. I think I agree. It's the first time that I was mildly disappointed. Underwhelmed is the word I want to use. Only because, and I was wondering if the way that it was shot was not making it seem that we are directly in Shane's POV.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if maybe, spoiler for people, gentle spoiler, if next season, when we get the documentary, it will maybe be filmed differently and
Hmm.
we will get a different perspective. But
Hmm.
I just think that line, Ilya, we're not alone, they can see us,
Yeah.
is the spine of the book.
I know. And I wondered if I think I wondered too if that would have been because you're not in Shane's head and so you are more aware of like all the people around and the cameras, like if that would have caused so much alarm for people to be like, "Oh my god, did Shane just like out them?" Like I don't know if it just maybe was like okay, if Shane says this and as a viewer you can see like the people and you can see that they're like how public this is, like would that cause people to be more concerned that like Shane just gave them away? Because I think in the book it's in such a like a dream state, like you don't really know who's there, like you don't really know like what's happening because it's like because Shane's like just gotten the wind knocked out of him. So that was my thought. I was like, is it just because would people be freaking out that like, "Oh my god, Shane just outed them?" But I was cracking up when they were in the hospital and you kept going, like, because Shane's so, like, drugged up, and he's just like,
Yeah.
"Ilya."
Hi. The better when he's holding his hand
Yes, and his
destroyed me.
eyes closed. I know. Someone pointed out that Shane's heart rate goes up when Ilya like, it goes from, like, 80 to 100 something, and I was like, "Oh my god." Just all the little details, but just I know I love that when Ilya took his hand, he just visibly relaxed, and I'm like,
Relaxes.
"Oh my god, sweet baby." And I think those of us who've read the books know, like, Ilya's showing up, and he's, like, thinking about that they need to end it again, and there Shane is being like, "Cottage,"
Yeah.
so so sweet.
And I
I
thought that was an
Yeah,
interesting choice too, an interesting divergence from the book, because they've adapted it pretty true to
yeah,
form for the most
yeah,
part. So I thought it was another interesting thing where Shane doesn't say, "Don't you wish we got more time?"
I know. That was the other line that was missing for me, though, like, "Don't you always wish we had more time?" And I know, those 2 lines were like those are 2 of my favorite lines. I was
Me
surprised
too.
because I think those are really popular lines. I was surprised that those weren't in there because I think it does I think that, like, "Don't you always wish we had more time?" is, like, one of the things that, like, Ilya's like, "Yeah,"
Yeah.
but I know, I do more in the, Ilya, they can see us. I was really
Yeah.
looking forward to that line because I that is one of my favorite parts in the book, and I think especially seeing it from Ilya's POV later and Shane asking him and this is a spoiler, sorry, folks,
Yeah.
but Shane asking, like, how could no one tell that, like just being able to see how devastated Ilya was, he's like, "How could no one tell that we
Yeah.
were together?"
Yeah.
I know. I know, I'm
I
interested to see
yeah.
how they handle it, for sure.
I think that maybe I don't know why I feel this way. This is just like an intuitive hit, but I have a feeling that when we get the documentary footage, we'll see a different
Could be.
story.
Yeah. I almost wonder, like, is it like I know I kept thinking Ilya was gonna, like, go after
Me
I
too.
was yeah, I kept being like, "Okay, is he gonna go after" I know, I kind of am wondering if we're gonna see a different perspective and, because it's hard to see Ilya's face through most of it, like, you can kinda
Yeah.
get, like, the side, but I know, I feel like I was watching Ilya closer than I was watching Shane during that scene because I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god," but I know, like, how scary that was that's how scary that was for for him too, because who has just lost somebody to be like, "Oh my god, Shane just got hit," like, that's
Yeah.
freaks him out for sure. So
And the cinematography, I just loved like the two of them coming to terms with their relationship, and then we get their face off and how fun it is for them. Like
mhm,
their relationship has always their physical, sexual, romantic relationship has always enhanced their their playing
Yes.
or their
Yeah.
connection on the ice, but you
Yep.
really see it here. Like, we have allowed ourselves to sink into these feelings, and he steals the puck from him and he looks back and he's smiling, right? Like, this,
They're having so much fun. They're
it's like
having so much
they're
fun.
enjoying it more.
Yes.
It's more
Yes.
fun for them.
It's more fun for them. And I think that's the thing is like that there's that tension the whole I mean, both through both their books, right? That like that this thing between them could be career ending and like what you see is that it's actually it enhances
Yeah.
like they play so well together when they are getting along and I loved seeing them on the same all-star team. I thought that was so cute. They were so
Yeah.
cute
The
and it's
kiss.
such a nice the kiss was so I wondered if they were gonna do that. That was so cute. I was like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god." I know, he's so cute. I mean, there's and just how happy, like, they
Yeah.
both are, and just I mean, I think is so sweet, and it's, like, a nice little piece of foreshadowing, but, like, just how happy they are and, like and too, like, so clearly hiding in plain sight and that nobody picks up on it. Like, it's so it's so obvious, I think, and this
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh." So, but yeah, no, they're so cute. So,
So what has been your favorite moment overall from the show?
that's a hard question. That's a tough question. There's so many moments that I love. For the most recent episode, I just absolutely loved the monologue scene and I loved even just seeing Shane close his eyes as he's listening. I
Yeah.
thought was like a really nice touch. Loved the whole tuna melt sequence. Like I thought that was just done really really well and just like being able to see them how not on the same page they are during that whole conversation. Then I think one of my absolute favorite things though that the show's done is they're really their first time together, I think was handled so well from so many different perspectives,
Yeah.
including like the way it handled consent, the way it handled safe sex, and the way it handled like, Ilya just the way Ilya took care of Shane during that I've seen, I think was so beautifully done. And just how sweet they are with each other afterward too. I think that scene still is like one of might be my favorite. I think is just really, really, really well done and important. I think really
Yeah.
important to show sex like that on television,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. I was like, I've never been so happy HBO has been involved in something.
I mean, I just was like, I mean, I think it's so, I mean, I think it was just handled so well. And I think there's been interviews where they say like, like Jacob Tierney has been incredibly intentional with like really plotting out and they had, intimacy coordinator on set. And I mean, I think that showing sex the way they have in this show, I think is so important because I think there's, of course, there still is such a huge stigma around sex and showing sex and, like sex in books and like what we talked about earlier, where people are like, oh, well, you're just watching it for the sex or you're just reading it for the sex. And it's like, it's so much more than that. There's so much being communicated during these scenes. And also sex is, part of the human experience for a lot of
Yeah.
people. Like like sex is like it's, I mean, it's I always sex is part of life. Like so I think it's
Yeah.
like the fact that we still shy away from it so much is interesting. But I love the way that it was very thoughtfully portrayed in this show. From beginning to now, it's been really thoughtfully portrayed.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. So what are your hopes and dreams for the finale?
So my theory is now, especially because they did pull back intentionally on the sex in this last episode, I think we're going to see a balancing out. I think we're going to see both. I think we're going to see like the sex and the communication at the cottage. I think I really just want to see them be able to be together and have the time they want. I'm really looking forward to the scene with Shane's parents. There is a line in that scene in particular that I am hoping they don't change because I will be I will cry.
Is it
I
lovers or lovers?
that line is so funny to me, but like when like Shane is starting to panic and like Ilya like kneels down next to him and I think Shane's mom is the one who's like since they were rookies. Like this has been going on since their rookie season. And she's like, "I can't believe it." And the dad, I think his dad is like looking at them now, I kind of can. And I love that line because I think it just shows like one, I think it shows like how accepting the family is gonna be of of not just Shane, but Ilya, like how much they're going to embrace him. And then two, just like how beautiful their connection is if it's that apparent, like that you can just look at them and know that this has been like despite everything they've been through, that this is,
Yeah.
they're it for each other. They're so they're like I've only ever loved one person. I think is just that whole scene I think has some of the best lines. So I'm really looking forward to that scene for
Do you think
sure.
we're getting that next episode?
I think so.
I was wondering if this season would cut out with Shane's dad finding them. Because I've heard it
I
ends
would
on a
hope
cliffhanger, and I'm
not.
like, how? If it goes
I
through the
would
whole
hope
book.
not. Yeah, I mean, I think, I would hope not because I think that would leave I think there has been, like, a really nice arc with Shane's parents, like, kind of starting to understand, like, I think you can kinda see it at lunch where they are when his dad's, like, questioning the princess thing
The
and,
Swedish princess.
like, the Swedish princess, like, you can see like, they're like, "Ugh," yeah, I think I would hope I have a feeling what's gonna happen this is my hypothesis. I think they're gonna cut before the press conference. I don't think we're gonna see the press conference. I think that's what's gonna get left out, and it's like you're gonna see them going out together,
But not
and
know what
that's
they're
where
announcing.
but not know what they're announcing.
Okay.
I
So
think
we won't
I
spoil that
or
here for people.
yeah, I think that's what it's gonna be. I think you're gonna see them walking out together and not completely know what they're announcing, and then, um, I think that's where it'll end. 'Cause I think that I've heard a rumor that there's just one location for the cottage, so I think that would make sense, but I don't know. We'll see. Well, I went back and forth on the ending for this last episode too, so we'll see. Jacob could shock us all, and I mean, I think they were still kind of finishing up some episodes, but they would have had to shot everything. I don't think that, I don't know. I can't believe they would leave it on that much of a cliffhanger if they weren't 100% sure they were getting a season 2, and I don't know that they knew they were getting a season 2 until it would have been too late to make the change that substantial, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll find
Yeah.
out.
I'm
On
really
Christmas Day, he better not
Yeah.
hurt us like that. Yeah.
I know. I'm like the balance of I'm covering Stranger Things on the podcast. So,
Yeah.
and now we're covering this show. So, dude, I did like rearrange my schedule because I'm like, I do want to talk about the finale. And I think it's
Mhm.
important to talk about the finale. But so, yeah, I don't know why I feel like it's going to end with them being found out, but no. But then I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. They've done such
I
a
just
great job with the show so far. So, and done such a good job of like taking about 25% of a little bit less sometimes, but just about 20 to 25% of the book each episode.
yeah. I think that I'm trying to think. I think they're gonna need that in the episode because I think that scene is really kind of the main tension in that little part. I mean, that's kind of like the main because they get there and they're lovey-dovey and there I mean, there is relationship progression that happens, but I mean, I think that is like the tense moment in that little part of the book, right? So I don't know that there would be enough without having that moment and resolving it to really drive that episode the whole way, but I could be wrong.
Do
It
you
happens
think that
sometimes.
there's enough in book 2 that they'll split book 2 to 2 seasons?
My hypothesis is that season 2 is gonna be longer,
I do
and
too.
I think they're going to use it as a jumping off point to do the other couples, is I think what they're gonna do. I feel like 'cause it's kind of a shame it's a shame that, like, Scott and Kip didn't get more. Like and I think, they only had 6 episodes, right? So, I think they told the story as best as they could in that time frame, but I think the show has been such a phenomenon that they would be crazy just to do 2 seasons, and I think that they'll probably use season 2 as kind of like a jumping off point, so I think it'll be longer, and I think they'll use it to introduce some
Sorry,
of the
like
other
Troy and
characters.
Harrison, yeah.
Yeah, like Troy and Ryan and, like, Harris. And I mean, I think there's plenty. And I mean, I think the long game deals with quite a bit. I mean, there's a lot going on in that books, but I think that they'll probably use it as like as a way to start going into some of the other books and some of the other couples, and I think that'll be really fun.
Yeah.
So,
All right. I've been wondering how they're going to deal with season 2 because there's a lot of stuff in the book that I wish was more fleshed out, and I think the show has an opportunity to do so, and and the way that the show has handled everything taboo
mhm,
with care is making me hope that some of the more um mental health taboo stuff from book
yep,
2
I agree.
is just handled in a way that they could dive deeper into it. I don't know. The book does a great job, but there's a lot in the book. So it's sort of like it's a plot and then it sort of gets just like tied up at the end.
Mhm,
And it sort of like loses a little bit of that momentum with
yeah,
some of the other major plot points that happen in book 2. So I've been curious like what people think will happen. But yeah, I'm really excited. I think that this has been such a critical text for
I
2025. I
agree.
think it has been
Yep,
such a, you know, it's um we're in this season of like gay romance has brought us together, and I am a true believer. I say this all the time that we want to be united. We want to be in alignment with each other. And there have
mhm,
been so many pop culture things that have happened this year that have just proven like maybe we all want to be connected. And I just
yeah.
love that the year gets to kind of end on this note of two things, not just this, but two things in the cultural zeitgeist between this and Stranger Things. I don't know if you watch Stranger Things, but
I'm not caught up on Stranger Things, but yes, I completely agree, and I think that, I think one of the things that's been so fun for me is with making these videos is that the just the wide diversity in my comment section is so fun. It's so cool to
yeah.
see. Like, I mean, you have people from all different countries, all different backgrounds, different genders. I mean, it's just that has been, I think, one of the coolest parts about this. I think it is like one of those things where, I keep seeing like pieces where they're like, why do like straight women like this? And I'm I'm like, I don't know. I can't speak for, but like, I mean, for me, like, I'm like, I just want everybody down bad. Like, I just want
Yeah.
everybody down bad all the
Yearning.
time. Yeah. I want everybody down bad all the time.
Yeah. I've heard people say that. I definitely fall into a queer category. I'm like, I'm like, I hope I have a boyfriend and my boyfriend has a boyfriend. Like, I just would love to be in a relationship with Ilya and Shane. Okay, there's a part of me that's like, queer storytelling. Like, yes, here we go. And so, like, I think that there's definitely a part of me that feels that way, but it's not like I'm watching the show because they're gay. It's like I'm watching the show because it's a good love story. And I think that that's, yeah, like the year of yearning. We had like Connor Fisher in the summer, Conrad Fisher. I don't know, Connor stories in my mind. But we had Conrad Fisher over the summer with The Summer I Turned Pretty. It's like people like yearning. Women like yearning. Like they like stories like this. And I think that it's just a good love story. Like it's it's good tension. It's relatable. Like I don't play hockey. I will never play hockey. I will never understand what it is like to be a man in the NHL, potentially queer. But I can understand and empathize with what it is to be living a life that is so filled with pressure and prestige and such demand of perfection and expectation that you know you don't feel comfortable sharing your sexuality or sharing your private life or whatever. And so I think that that's like it's just good, rich storytelling. It like has nothing to do with them being queer. Them being queer is just an added level of like, and I think these kind of stories should be told. Thank you so much for listening to Femme and Furious podcast. Unfortunately, I lost like the last 5 minutes of my interview with Ren. I didn't realize our connection cut out, but I thought it was still going on my computer anyway. So we've got 97% of the interview. About the last 5 minutes got cut off which was really just Ren plugging herself. And I think it's important. So I'm re-recording this as a separate little goodbye. And I'm sorry that you won't actually be able to hear us say goodbye on the show. But if you're looking to follow Ren, she is on Instagram, she's on TikTok, and her Instagram handle, which I will put again in the show notes if you need it. Don't worry, it's all in the show notes for you. Her Instagram handle is at Ren Browne with an E writes. So that's on Instagram and on TikTok. She also is an indie author and she writes Western romance. So not just cowboy romance, but like Western setting. Her most recent book is an MMF. Yeah, is an MMF storyline about two outlaws who take a woman under their wing and their developing relationship and everyone being down bad for everybody according to Ren. So I have not read it. It's now on my list. Ren will be back on the podcast. We will be discussing it. When and where, I'm not sure, but it's definitely now on my TBR and pretty high up there because Ren is so insightful and so incredible in her videos. I just know that her writing is going to match that. And by the way, I love a story where my boyfriends are boyfriends, okay? So you don't need to twist my arm to get me to read this story. I will put a link in the show note for where you can shop for the book. Ren did request that if given the opportunity, you could shop at your local bookstore. That's where she would prefer that you get the book. But I do have her book, which is called Adversity. I have the link for that, so you can buy from her directly as well and support her. Thank you so much to Ren for being here. Thank you to Heated Rivalry for just changing my fucking brain chemistry. If you like this episode, share it out with your friends, comment, review, all of that good stuff. I will be back on Tuesday. We are talking about Stranger Things, Season 5, Episode 4, The Sorcerer. So we are getting that last little dose of Volume 1 ahead of the Volume 2 drop. We will be talking about the season finale of Heated Rivalry next Friday. That will be just me unless I find somebody else that's going to come on here and talk about this stuff with me. Not hard since the entire internet is foaming at the mouth for this season of television. I will then be back every following Tuesday to dive into the last 4 episodes of Stranger Things. So excited. I'm going to see it in theaters with my family on New Year's Eve. I'm really looking forward to it. So hopefully you will be able to watch it in theater wherever you are. I know for me, I grew up like I saw Twilight in theaters. I saw all of the Harry Potters in theater, especially like the last couple of Harry Potters I saw as midnight releases. I saw Avengers Endgame and all of that stuff. Most Avengers movies, most Marvel movies I've seen in theater. So I am really excited to share this with my sisters who have never had the experience of being able to see a something with so much power in the cultural zeitgeist live in person with a packed theater with so many people that are invested in this story the way that we are invested in this story. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to sharing the rest of Stranger Things with you. I have a few requests that I put out on my Instagram the other day, and I would love if you guys could send these into me. You can send them into me at femmeandfurious@gmail.com. So, number one, I am looking for queer stories that are fundamental to the queer experience or just stories that are queer forward. So when I was creating this podcast was designed with queer community in mind. And I think that my focus has been a lot on the femme this year. And I would really love to open the doors to queer storytelling as far as like this podcast. It's called Femme and Furious. And I really do want to focus on women a lot because that's what I'm passionate about. But as a queer woman, queer being the easiest way, I guess, to describe what I would call myself, I would could not that I need to like qualify this to anybody, but I would say that my sexuality is pansexual. But anyway, as a person who is in the queer community, and really always has been, um, I just think that this needs to be a more inclusive space in that kind of storytelling, and I'm really interested in taking the platform of what 2026 can offer us and use this as just a space Femme and Furious as a space to explore what it's like to not be engrossed in toxic patriarchal masculinity. And so everything that's not that, which tends to be femme forward slash LGBTQ forward stories, is something that I'm interested in exploring further in the new year. So I am looking for like books, movies, TV shows, music that have fundamentally shaped your queer experience or that you think highlight the queer experience really well or that are very queer forward. So if you have any of those, send them to me, femmeandfurious at femmeandfuriouspod@gmail.com. I'm also looking for number 2. Anything that you are excited about for 2026. If you're just like, I can't wait for House of the Dragon, don't worry. You don't need to send me an email about that because I will be fucking covering it. But what are you excited about? What's coming out this year that you're like, yeah, I've been waiting for this. I can't wait for this thing. Please send that to me because I would really love to know and just like expand my ideas about what I think I want to cover on this show. I have like a pretty solid list of 2026 properties, but I'm really curious what you guys are most hyped about. The third is I am looking for anything that you are like, how have you survived pop culture if you have not read, watched, or seen this thing? So, one of those things I would say is Harry Potter. I'm sorry, I'm just not gonna cover that on the podcast, at least not this year, at least not right now. So, one that I can tell you that I will be covering in 2026 is the OC. It's not only a fundamental text for me as a person, but I think it influenced pop culture in a really profound way, and I'm excited to talk about it. So, I'm talking about at least the OC this year, but the year is long. And I know we'll have a lot of new stuff coming out, but I don't want to exclude stuff that has already made an imprint on pop culture. And so, what are those things that you think, like, if you have not read this or have not watched this, like, however are you surviving pop culture? Because I would love to cover that stuff on the podcast as well. And then last but not least, this is a maybe longer stretch, but bigger stretch. But I'm also looking for any resources to expand your media literacy. So I am currently reading a book right now called To Read Like a Professor. How to Read Literature Like a Professor, I think is the name of the book. It's really great. It's not dry, is the best way I can describe it. And I'm watching a YouTube series video essays that a listener recommended to me called Every Frame a Painting, which has been helping to expand my film knowledge and my film understanding. So, one of my goals this year is to build out my media literacy as a media critic so that this podcast can get better. And I'm really looking forward to what 2026 has to offer. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you to Ren for being here. I will see you on Tuesday. I love you guys so much. Have a wonderful weekend.